Hello everyone, this is Fadi, and thank you so much for joining us in this episode of the video series that we have entitled The Divine Son of Man, that comes from the book of Daniel. We have demonstrated so far that Jesus, whenever he applied this title to himself, Son of Man, he was not in any way ignoring his divinity, nor that he is shying away from demonstrating his divinity. We're going to see more of this today. In this episode, we are going to start looking at more passages from the New Testament where Jesus himself applied that title to himself but connected it to his divinity or divine nature. For instance, in Matthew 19, verse 10, the one that you're going to see right now in front of you, Jesus says, "For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which was lost." Now, here is what I want to emphasize. Jesus is saying the Son of Man has come. Come from where? Obviously, in Jesus' mind, he's talking about coming from heaven to earth to do what? To seek the lost and to save the lost. Seeking the lost, saving the lost. That's what Jesus came to do for the lost. Now, the next passage will demonstrate it even more clearly. "For I have come down from heaven." Which prophet, by the way? I mean, let's take a look at it right here. I want to show you one more time. Which prophet ever said that he come down from heaven? If you can find me a single prophet that said such a thing, I'll grant it to you. Obviously, only Jesus was that person who can say something like this. He says, "For I have come down from heaven, not to do my own will, but the will of him who sent me." So if he is in heaven, and someone also in heaven sent him, so he's talking about the Father. Both are in heaven, and the Word was with God, and the Word is God. Okay? So he came down from heaven, not to do my own will, but the will of him who sent me. So Jesus' place where he resided before coming to earth was heaven. This is the same Son of Man, by the way. Does this sound to you that this is a human being who is speaking like this? If that's not enough, let's take a look at yet another passage that we will find in the Gospel of John. Now remember, John began his Gospel in a prologue by making such a powerful statement. He said the following in verse 1, John 1, verse 1. "In the beginning, the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Okay? So this Word he identified in verse 14, and the Word became flesh. So here is the humanity that was taken upon now. That's what basically what Isaiah in Isaiah 9:6 said the following. He says, "A child is born," okay, that's in the flesh, "a son is given to us." Who was that son? Mighty God. So John proceeded to say, "No one hath seen the Father except the only begotten God who is in the bosom of the Father." Okay? No one hath seen God, he says, except the only begotten God who's in the bosom of the Father. So that's basically what John was saying. The Father, who is God, no one has seen him except the Son of God. That's Jesus himself. In John 14, Jesus demonstrated the same way. He said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except by me. Just as I am the one who was there and knows him, no one can go also to his presence without me." Philip basically was asking, well, show us the Father, and that will be enough for us. So Jesus says, "I've been with you for how long? And you have not seen the Father? If you've seen me, you have seen the Father also." So we see how Jesus always declared his divinity in a clear manner. Now let's see another passage from the same Gospel of John. In John 3, verse 13, Jesus is talking to Nicodemus and said the following, "No one has ascended into heaven, but he who descended from heaven, the Son of Man." Notice, the Son of Man. Once again, the one who came down, the one who's going to go up to heaven is the same one who came down from heaven. Who is that person? The Son of Man. That's the Son of Man. So the Son of Man came from heaven. The Son of Man is ascending to heaven. And we know that because Jesus today is seated at the right hand of God. Never the majesty or the Son, Yahweh. I mean, however you want to describe it, he is in heaven. He's alive. He's in heaven. He resurrected. He ascended. Nevertheless, show me a single prophet that fulfilled such, declaration. Obviously, only our Lord Jesus Christ, who had that ability, who has that power, who had that divine prerogative, and he is the one who declared these things in more than clear terms that he used with his audience, and the Jews got it, and sometimes they were troubled by it. They were seeking the more to kill him. They wanted to stone him. The high priest declared it a blasphemy when he declared himself to be the Son of Man of Daniel. When, during his trial, the high priest asked him in Mark 14, verses 60 to 64, he says, "Are you the Christ, the Son of the Most High," meaning the Son of God? Jesus said, "Not only I am the Christ, the Anointed One, not only I am the Son of God, but I am also," he said, "I am, and you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of the Majesty and coming in the clouds of heaven." In other words, I am that full package. And the high priest was enraged and called it blasphemy and says, "What else shall we, hear or know? What should we do now?" And he proceeded with the trial, and the result is history. Jesus was crucified. He carried away our sin. He died. He was buried. He resurrected and gave us justification by faith in his work. So what we have demonstrated so far, that Jesus used that title, Son of Man, not only to discuss his humanity, but also to demonstrate to all of us his divinity. It's clear then from all of these assertions that Jesus was clearly tying back himself to that divine Son of Man in Daniel chapter 7, verses 13 and 14, who has received authority and given dominion over all nations and all people and languages, and will worship him forever and ever. Only God is worshipped. Only God comes in the clouds of heaven. Only God has dominion over all things. And Jesus says, "I am that incarnate, God incarnate. I am that Son of Man of Daniel." Hopefully, you are finding this series to be helpful. Until we meet again in the next episode, have a blessed day. Thank you for watching. Please like our video, and we encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, CIRA International. And be sure also to click the bell so that you receive notifications whenever we upload new videos into the channel. And finally, I like to prayerfully encourage you to become a patron through Patreon. Your giving is much needed and will enable us to produce more and more of videos like this so that we can publish them on a weekly basis. So thank you in advance.